So let's get started on our first terrarium, and this is going to be an open terrarium for those lovely dry climate loving succulents. So first of all, a good thick 1-inch layer of our drainage substrate. So we have a nice thick layer of pebbles in the bottom of our jar. If you're using a shallower container, you can make that layer a little bit thinner, but really don't scrimp on this. This drainage is really essential to your terrarium. It will let you see when you're watering if there's enough water that it's leaking down and filling up the bottom, that you've maybe overwatered it a little bit, and it will help to keep those plant roots and that compost separated from that water so you don't have problems with rot or anything else. So really don't skimp on the bottom layer. If you're adding your activated carbon, this is the time to do that now, and just a little thin layer right over the top of your gravel or your clay balls or whatever your drainage substrate is. Next, we're going to add our compost. Now, cacti and succulents don't like really moisture retentive, rich compost. You can buy specific cacti and succulent compost. And if you have got really valuable or really beloved plants, it's worth investing in the right compost. If you can't get it, normal compost is fine. But a good tip, if you are using normal compost, is to add a little bit of horticultural grit. That's really fine grit, just to aid the drainage. But if you can get it, I want you to use, please, the right compost for the right plant. So cacti and succulent compost, and that's what we're using today. So I've got my compost, and we're going to try to add that into the jar without getting too much on the sides. So we'll see how we go. So that wasn't too bad. We've got a little bit of soil up the side of the jar, so there's a really easy way to get around this. You can, if you would like to, pay quite a lot of money for special terrarium tools. Now, these will have big long handles on them to make working your terrarium nice and easy. Or you can just raid the kitchen drawers. So I have here just a nice little parfait spoon with a long handle. I'm going to use that to push the soil right down nice and gently. Now we've still got the plants to go in, so I'm not going to worry that there's a little bit of soil at the sides still now. We can fix that at the end. Now, to create your terrarium, you can absolutely go out and buy gorgeous plants. There are stunning cacti and succulents out there, but I happen to already have quite a few in my garden. And these plants have a real superpower. They can heal themselves like crazy. In fact, if you take just one leaf from a house leek or a sempervivum like this, that will grow an entire new plant. Isn't that absolutely amazing? But to make life even easier for us, they produce little baby plantlets. Now, these don't have roots, but don't worry about that. They will send out roots so fast you won't believe it. So I have a few different varieties here, and I am just going to pick a couple of these, just like that, from the parent plant. So we're just holding the stem and pulling, and that's it, brand new plant. Really don't worry that it hasn't got roots. If for whatever reason it's snapped off and it doesn't even have a stem, even if it's like that, it will regrow. These are amazing little plants. So don't worry about it if it doesn't just come off the exact way you thought it was going to. Plant it anyway. Trust me, it will grow. What you can do, if you want to be a little bit ambitious, is you can do a micro terrarium. So you could get a tiny little jar like this, and one of these tiny little baby ones, put your, in this case it would need to be a very small drainage layer, small compost layer, put your tiny little plant in there, and in a couple of months or a couple of years, it's going to grow into a full-size adult plant inside that tiny little pot. It's a long game project, but it'll only take you a few moments to do, and it's great fun. So I think we'll maybe do one of those as well. But for now, we're working on our lovely, beautiful, big open terrarium. So I've got one of my parent plants here, and I've got my little spoon. So I'm just going to dig a tiny little hole there, and I can actually fit my hand inside the jar. So we're going to do that. So we've got two different varieties of sempervivum here. The common name for these is house leeks. Don't ask me why, they don't smell or taste anything like onions. It's probably because they used to grow between the cracks of the house tiles, something like that. But you can see those are beautiful colour combinations, lovely greens and reds. And we've got a lovely sedum growing here as well that I'm going to harvest. Just like those gorgeous sempervivums, this will grow from detached leaves and it will send out roots really easily. So this is just a fantastic way to get plants completely for free, and who doesn't love that? Now this does have a trailing habit, but I'm going to encourage it to trail up the side of that glass and give me a little bit of height. And just for a nice bit of colour diversity, I've got a beautiful little grey stone crop as well. So again, a lovely little succulent, and we're going to pop that in here. So you can see it's getting a little bit crowded in there for me to try and get my fingers down. So we're going to just really simply get a second one of those spoons. I'm going to use them like a big pair of tweezers. So I'm going to gently hold my plant, lower it down neatly into place, and just tuck it in there nicely. So these are living plants. They are going to grow and expand and take up more room inside that container. So I don't really want to add any more in there. It's just going to get overcrowded. You will need to replant your terrarium every 3 or 4 years. You'll need to take out the plants and refresh the compost, or if you can't take the plants out, at the very least refresh the compost around them. So once these have been sitting in there for 3 or 4 years, they probably will have outgrown it. So I'll be able to lift them out, divide them, and make even more beautiful terrariums. So to finish this off, I'm going to use just some nice little decorative stones. And I'm actually going to use a little bit more of the gravel that we used in the bottom of the jar, so it'll have a lovely sense of symmetry. I'm just going to use my little spoon to place that right where I want it. These are wonderfully forgiving plants. So even though this is open, and you will get a little tiny bit of evaporation, if you don't just get around to watering these, or if you go on holiday, they'll recover. They'll be absolutely fine. So these are great for busy people whose lives sometimes get in the way. Now, if you're doing this with cacti, it's really worth using your tongs or using your 2 spoons so that you're not accidentally pricking your fingers. But with these lovely soft sedums, it's nice and easy. So I've got that all neatly planted up now. Just move this out of the way. Now that this is all nicely planted up, I can see that there is a little bit of soil around the edges of the jar. Very easy to fix this. Easiest way is just to get yourself a little bit of paper towel, get our trusty little spoon, just going to wrap that around the back of the spoon and then gently wipe. You do everything you can to try to stop it from getting up the sides, but sometimes it does. And just for the sake of making it look beautiful, it's worth taking that little extra minute just to wipe away any traces of soil. So that beautiful little open terrarium doesn't need anything at the moment. We can give it a tiny drop of water, and I mean a tiny drop. So there's a few ways that you can do this. You can just very carefully and gently pour a little bit of water into your terrarium. If you have a really huge terrarium and you're watering it for the first time, you can use a little funnel and a piece of plastic tubing. But especially if you've got kids, the most fun thing is to get a straw or a bit of plastic tubing, dip it into your water, put your finger firmly over the top. You see that is going to hold on to the water up to the level that it was, and then very gently, a little bit at a time, just lifting your finger ever so slightly off. So you're just barely lifting your finger off and putting it back on, and that will let you control just 1 or 2 little drops of water at a time to get them exactly where you want them. It just makes it a bit more fun for the kids too. They'll be fighting over who gets to water the terrarium. No, I shouldn't say that. Of course, they'll never fight. Children never fight. So that's all it needs. Because you can see the sides of the jar, you can see when the soil has become really dried out. Because you can see the stones at the bottom, you'll see if you've overwatered it because the water is pooling in the bottom. These are not moisture-loving plants, but that does not mean that they never want to be watered. It just means water them very sparingly and water them very infrequently. The fact that these can survive without water and survive in hot environments does not mean they want to be kept right on top of the radiator or the heater or right on a really sunny windowsill. The ideal spot for this is in indirect sunlight. Because this is in a jar, if you sit it on a sunny windowsill, that sunshine is going to be concentrated once coming through the window and then concentrated again coming through the sides of the glass, and you can absolutely cook your plants. This does best away from direct heat, away from direct light, and thrives on a little bit of neglect. So the perfect office companion.